In 1914, Europe was a continent on edge, divided into two rival alliances that had been forged from fear, suspicion, and the desire for power. The Triple Entente, composed of France, Britain, and Russia, had united primarily in their apprehension of Germany, the continent's rising powerhouse, whose military and industrial strength was unparalleled in Europe. Opposing them was the Triple Alliance, Germany wary of encirclement by its rivals, Austria-Hungary attempting to hold together a fragile multi-ethnic empire, and Italy, which was motivated more by opportunistic ambitions than by loyalty, hoping to gain territory at France's expense. The tension reached a breaking point on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo, where Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated by 19-year-old Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip. This act, seemingly small, became the match that ignited the powder keg of Europe. Austria-Hungary, convinced that Serbia had assisted the assassin, issued an ultimatum demanding humiliating concessions. Serbia's refusal to comply provided Austria-Hungary with the pretext to declare war, initiating a cascade of mobilizations. Russian Tsar Nicholas II, feeling obligated to protect Serbia, a fellow Slavic nation, ordered his army to mobilize. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, interpreted Russian mobilization as an immediate threat, declaring war on Russia and, shortly thereafter, on France. Germany implemented the Schlieffen Plan, aiming to quickly defeat France through Belgium before turning east to face Russia. Within days, millions of men marched to war across Europe, and neutral nations like Italy and the United States initially refrained from involvement. Yet, Germany's invasion of Belgium triggered Britain's entry into the war, setting the stage for a continental conflict of unprecedented scale. The initial phase of World War I was characterized by swift movements, bloody confrontations, and the emergence of new military tactics that would define the coming years. German forces advanced through Belgium, facing unexpected resistance at Liège, and committed atrocities that fueled Allied propaganda and swayed public opinion worldwide. France, unaware of Germany's strategic encirclement, launched Plan 17, an offensive into German territory, only to suffer enormous losses during the Battle of the Frontiers. British forces engaged at Mons, but heavily outnumbered. They joined the French in retreat. The Allies managed to halt the German advance at the River Marne, 40 miles from Paris, preserving the French capital in a desperate counterattack that incurred 250,000 casualties. The subsequent race to the sea saw both sides attempting to outflank each other in northern France, culminating in the First Battle of Ypres, where Allied forces clung to their positions amid relentless German assaults. By the end of 1914, both armies had entrenched along a 350-mile front from the North Sea to Switzerland, marking the beginning of trench warfare. Meanwhile, at sea, Britain's Royal Navy won the Battle of Heligoland Bight and imposed a naval blockade on Germany, aiming to cripple its economy. Germany, however, introduced U-boats, which could attack undetected from beneath the waves, creating a deadly new challenge for British naval supremacy. On the Eastern Front, Russian forces suffered catastrophic defeats at Tannenberg and Masurian Lakes against Germany, while Austria-Hungary failed in Serbia, revealing weaknesses that would persist for the war's duration.
The expansion of the war beyond Europe. World War I quickly spread far beyond the European theatre, transforming into a truly global conflict. The Ottoman Empire aligned with the Central Powers, attacking Russian ports along the Black Sea and engaging in fierce fighting in the Caucasus. German colonies in Africa and the Pacific became battlegrounds with varying results. British forces seized Togoland, and Samoa New Zealand troops occupied German New Guinea. But German forces under Colonel von Lettow-Vorbeck effectively waged guerrilla campaigns in East Africa, tying down Allied troops. Japan, honoring its alliance with Britain, captured the German naval base at Qingdao, demonstrating the global reach of the conflict. Naval battles also claimed lives far from Europe, such as Admiral von Spee's East Asia Squadron, which initially defeated British ships at Coronel before being decimated at the Falkland Islands. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, British forces seized Basra to control vital oil supplies, and the fighting in Serbia continued with massive casualties. The introduction of new weapons, submarines, poison gas, and strategic bombings reshaped the nature of war, making it increasingly deadly for combatants and civilians alike. By 1915, over 1 million soldiers had fallen, and battles in Gallipoli, the Caucasus, and Africa highlighted both the war's global scope and the staggering human cost.
By 1916, the war had settled into a grueling stalemate defined by attrition, heavy casualties, and sporadic offensives along multiple fronts. The Battle of Verdun epitomized the brutal strategy of attrition, with German forces seeking to bleed France white, resulting in over 700,000 combined casualties. The British Army, still adapting to trench warfare, introduced steel helmets and faced unprecedented losses at battles such as the Somme, where the first day alone saw 57,000 casualties. Italy, swayed by Allied promises of territorial gains, joined the Allies and engaged Austria-Hungary along the Isonzo River, but repeated offensives yielded minimal gains and heavy losses. Russia faced immense strain, suffering massive casualties while attempting offensives like the Bruzulov offensive, and political instability at home foreshadowed revolution. Meanwhile, Allied naval dominance allowed blockades to starve Germany, though German U-boat campaigns retaliated, sinking passenger liners and pushing neutral nations like the United States closer to involvement. The human toll, technological innovation, and strategic deadlocks underscored the unprecedented scale of modern industrial warfare. The United States initially maintained neutrality, but repeated German provocations, including unrestricted submarine warfare and the Zimmermann telegram, urging Mexico to attack the U.S., shifted public opinion and prompted President Woodrow Wilson to declare war in 1917. American manpower and resources began to tip the scales in favor of the Allies, though it would take months for full mobilization. Meanwhile, Russia's collapse following the Bolshevik Revolution allowed Germany to redeploy troops to the Western Front, resulting in a final, desperate offensive in the spring of 1918 under General Lut. Germany's stormtrooper tactics initially made gains, threatening to split British and French forces, but the arrival of American divisions, fresh Allied counterattacks, and improved coordination under French General Ferdinand Foch gradually halted German advances. The introduction of tanks, coordinated artillery, and air superiority increasingly favored the Allies, setting the stage for the final phase of the war. In addition, developments in the Middle East, including British-led victories at Megiddo and advances in Palestine, further undermined central power positions, while the collapse of Bulgaria, the Ottoman Empire, and eventually Austria-Hungary removed key German allies.
By late 1918, the Central Powers faced inevitable defeat. Germany's final offensives had failed, Allied forces advanced decisively on all fronts, and internal unrest at home, combined with Britain's effective blockade, hastened the German collapse. Armistices were signed: Bulgaria, the Ottoman Empire, Austria-Hungary, and finally Germany in Compiègne, ending fighting at 11 a.m. on November 11, 1918. World War I had devastated Europe, with 9.5 million soldiers dead, 21 million wounded, and 7 million civilian deaths. Empires dissolved, new nations emerged. And the Middle East, Europe, and far-flung colonies experienced profound geopolitical shifts. The Paris Peace Conference and the Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh terms on Germany, created the League of Nations, and redrew the map of Europe and the Middle East. Though the war had ended, the seeds of the future conflict were sown, and the global balance of power had shifted dramatically. For the United States, participation had been limited but impactful, signaling a new era of American engagement in global affairs. The legacy of the war: technological innovation, societal change, and geopolitical upheaval ensured that the world would never be the same again.